I still remember the way my voice sounded when I said it. Soft, almost like I didn't recognize it as mine. "Son, take it easy," I whispered. And even now, I don't know if I said it to him or to myself. It started like any other late Thursday night, the kind where the house is quiet in that heavy, lived-in way. Not peaceful, just settled. My husband, Greg, had fallen asleep downstairs in front of the TV again, some ESPN rerun flickering against his face. The dog was curled up by the couch, occasionally twitching in her sleep. The whole house smelled faintly like takeout Thai and the vanilla candle I'd lit hours earlier and forgotten about. I was upstairs in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. Instagram, Facebook, emails, nothing important, nothing real, just noise to fill the silence. That's when I heard it. A dull thud. At first, I thought it came from outside, maybe a car door slamming or someone dropping something on the sidewalk. But then it came again, sharper this time, controlled, rhythmic, from down the hall, from Evan's room. I froze. There's something about being a parent. You develop this sixth sense for when something's off. It's not loud or dramatic. It's subtle. A shift in the air. A feeling in your chest that tightens before your brain even catches up. I stood up slowly, my bare feet pressing into the hardwood floor. The house felt different all of a sudden. Too quiet in the wrong places. Another sound. This time unmistakable. Voices. Low, tense. I moved towards the door, my heart starting to beat faster. Evan wasn't supposed to have anyone over. He was 17, sure, and we'd loosened the rules a bit, but he always told me when friends came by, especially at night. I stepped into the hallway. The light from his room was on, spilling into the dark like a warning. His door wasn't fully closed, just slightly ajar. And I could hear it now. A girl. Her voice. Soft. Strained. Almost pleading. "Evan, wait." Then something shifted. A scuffle. Not violent exactly, but urgent. Close. My chest tightened. I didn't think. I just moved. Each step down the hallway felt heavier than the last, like I was walking towards something I already knew I didn't want to see. I reached the door and pushed it open. And everything in my life, everything I thought I understood about my family, tilted. Evan was standing there, shirtless, breathing hard, his back partially turned to me. And on his bed, God, on his bed was a woman. Not a girl, a woman. Her hair was messy, her blouse half unbuttoned, her face flushed. Not just from embarrassment, but something deeper, something raw. And I knew her. Of course I did. Because she had been sitting at my kitchen table 3 nights earlier, laughing at something Greg said, sipping white wine like she belonged there. Her name was Melissa, my husband's coworker. 41 years old. Married. No kids. And she was in my son's bed. For a second, none of us moved. It was like time stalled, stretched so thin it might snap. Evan turned slowly when he realized I was there. The look on his face, it wasn't guilt at first. It was shock. Pure, unfiltered shock. Like he hadn't expected reality to walk in. "Mom," that's all he got out. Melissa scrambled upright, pulling her blouse together, her hands shaking. She couldn't even look at me. And something inside me, something instinctive and primal, just broke. "Son," I said quietly. My voice didn't match what I was feeling. It was too calm, too steady. "Take it easy." I don't even know why I said it. Maybe because if I raised my voice, if I let even a fraction of what I was feeling out, the entire house would collapse in on itself. Evan swallowed hard, his eyes darting between me and Melissa. "This isn't..." But he stopped. Because what could he say? There was no version of that sentence that didn't sound ridiculous. I stepped fully into the room. Melissa finally looked at me then, and I swear to God there were tears in her eyes. Not for me, not even for what she'd done, but for herself, like she was already grieving the consequences. I can explain, she said. I actually let out a small laugh. Not loud, not dramatic. Just hollow. Please don't, I said, because I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear any version of how this happened, or why, or when it started, because one question was already clawing its way up my throat, and I wasn't ready to ask it. How long? Evan ran a hand through his hair, pacing now, like he needed movement just to stay grounded. Mom, it's not what you think. I turned to him slowly. Then tell me what I think. He opened his mouth, closed it. Nothing. Exactly. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, suffocating. Melissa slid off the bed, grabbing her purse from the floor. She moved like someone trying to disappear without making a sound. I should go, she muttered. That's when something in me snapped back into focus. No, I said. Not loudly, but firm. She froze. I stepped closer. Not aggressively, but with purpose. You don't get to just walk out, I said. Not after this. She looked at me, her face pale. I didn't mean for... Stop. I cut in. Just stop talking. Because every word out of her mouth felt like gasoline on something already burning. I turned back to Evan. And that's when I really saw him. Not my little boy. Not the kid who used to fall asleep on my chest during movies. A young man. A stranger. There was something different in his eyes. Something complicated. Defensive, yes, but also conflicted. And underneath all of it, something that made my stomach drop. Attachment. Evan, I said slowly. How long has this been going on? He hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything. Answer me. A few months, he said finally, his voice low. The room spun. A few months. While she'd been coming over for dinner. While Greg joked with her in the living room. While I trusted her enough to leave her alone in my house. While my son... I turned sharply toward Melissa. A few months? I repeated. She nodded. Barely. And that's when the second realization hit. Harder than the first. Does your husband know? I asked. She shook her head quickly. Of course not. I let out a breath that felt like it scraped my lungs on the way out. Does Greg know? I asked, my voice quieter now. That question hung in the air like a loaded gun. And for the first time, Melissa's composure cracked completely. She looked away. That was all it took. My heart dropped straight through the floor. I turned slowly toward Evan again. Evan, I said, barely above a whisper. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because in that moment, everything rearranged itself. Every late night at the office. Every time Greg mentioned Melissa a little too casually. Every time I ignored that faint nagging feeling. Because I didn't want to be that wife. The pieces slid together so cleanly it made me sick. This wasn't just about my son. This was bigger. So much bigger. And standing there in that room, looking at both of them, I realized something I wasn't ready to say out loud yet. This didn't start with Evan. Not really. And whatever was happening in my house, it wasn't just betrayal. It was a chain reaction. And I had just walked in on the middle of it. I didn't scream. That's the part that still unsettles me when I think back on it. Most people, I imagine, would have lost it right there. Thrown something.
Said something irreversible. Torn the whole scene apart just to make it match the chaos inside. But I didn't. I just stood there, looking at them, feeling something colder than anger settle into my chest. Clarity. The kind that doesn't come with comfort, just sharp edges and ugly truths. Melissa was the first to break the silence. I need to leave, she said again, her voice barely holding together. This time, I didn't stop her. Not because I forgave her, but because suddenly, she wasn't the center of this anymore. Go, I said flatly. She hesitated for half a second, like she expected me to change my mind. Then she grabbed her bag and moved quickly past me, her shoulder brushing mine as she slipped into the hallway. I didn't look at her. I listened, her heels clicking too fast on the hardwood. The front door opening, closing, gone. Just like that. but nothing about this felt over. I turned back to Evan. He hadn't moved much, still pacing slightly, still wired like his body didn't know how to settle after being caught in mid-motion. "Sit down," I said. He blinked. "What?" "Sit down." Something in my tone must have landed, because he did. Slowly, like he wasn't sure what version of me he was dealing with. I stayed standing. "I'm going to ask you questions," I said, "and I need you to answer them without spinning, without protecting anyone, and without lying. Can you do that?" He nodded, but it wasn't confident. "I'll try." "That's not good enough." He swallowed. "Okay, yeah." I let a second pass, steadying myself. "Who started it?" His eyes flickered. "I don't know," he said. "Wrong answer." "Try again." He exhaled hard, dragging a hand over his face. "She did," he admitted. "Kind of." My jaw tightened. "Define kind of." She'd come over sometimes when Dad wasn't here," he said, avoiding my eyes. "At first it was normal, just talking. She'd ask about school, college, stuff like that." I felt my stomach twist. "She'd sit in here?" "Sometimes." I closed my eyes for a second. In my house, in his room. Well, I thought she was just another one of Greg's coworkers who needed a place to crash after a long day. And then I pressed. "She started opening up," he said, "about her marriage, about how things weren't good, how she felt invisible." I almost laughed again, but this time it didn't come out. "Invisible. That must have been really compelling for you," I said quietly. He winced. "I didn't think it was going to turn into anything," he said, at first. But it did. Of course it did. "When?" I asked. "When did it cross that line?" He hesitated again. "Evan." "Around Christmas," he said finally. Christmas. I physically felt that land in my body. That night, she'd been here. We'd all been here. Wine, music, Greg telling the same dumb stories, me cooking too much food like I always do. And all that time, I pressed my fingers against my lips, trying to keep myself steady. "So for months," I said slowly, "you've been sleeping with your father's coworker, a married woman, in this house." He flinched at the way I said it. "When you say it like that, how else should I say it?" He didn't answer, because there was no softer version. "And you didn't think to stop?" I asked. "At any point?" "I tried," he said quickly. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time I saw something that complicated everything. He wasn't just defensive. He was tangled up in it, emotionally. "I told her we shouldn't," he continued, more than once, but she'd come back, or text, or what? He hesitated. "Or she'd say things," he said. "What things?" "That she needed me," he admitted. "That I made her feel seen." There it was again, that word, seen, like it meant something sacred. I felt something ugly rise up in me then, not just anger at her, but something sharper, jealousy, and I hated myself for even thinking it, but it was there. Because when was the last time anyone said that about me? I pushed that thought down immediately. This wasn't about me. "Did your father know?" I asked. That question came out quieter. He looked up at me quickly. "No." I held his gaze. "Are you sure?" "Yes," he said firmly this time. "Mom, no, he doesn't know." I studied him for a moment, and I believed him. At least, I believed that part. But that didn't mean Greg was innocent. Not anymore. Because there was something else that didn't add up. "Then why," I said slowly, "did she feel comfortable enough to start something like this in the first place?" Evan frowned. "I don't know. But I did. Or at least, I had a suspicion forming, and it made my skin crawl." I turned away from him, walking toward the window. The street outside was quiet. A couple houses down, someone's porch light flickered on and off, probably on a timer. Normal life, still happening, like my world hadn't just tilted. "Did she ever talk about your dad?" I asked, still facing away. Evan hesitated longer this time. That was all the answer I needed. "Evan?" "Yeah," he said quietly. I turned back. "What did she say?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Just stuff. That they worked late together a lot. he understood her, that he listened. Each word felt like a needle. Anything else? He looked down. She said your marriage wasn't what it used to be. That hit harder than anything else, because it wasn't entirely wrong. But hearing it from her, through him, that was something else. And you didn't think that was a problem, I asked. I didn't think it was my place, he said. Your place, I repeated. Yeah, he said, more defensive now. That's between you and Dad. And sleeping with her isn't your place either, I snapped. That finally cracked through his composure. I know that, he shot back. You think I don't know that? The room went quiet again. He looked like a kid for a second then. Not a man. Not someone in control. Just a 17-year-old who got in way over his head. I didn't plan this, he said, his voice lower now. I didn't go looking for it. No, I said. You just didn't stop it. He didn't argue, because he couldn't. I took a breath, trying to organize the chaos in my head, because this wasn't just about what happened between them. It was about what it meant, and there was one piece still missing. Where's your dad tonight? I asked. Evan blinked. At work, I think. I checked the time. It was almost midnight. Too late for a normal shift. Too late for anything that didn't come with an explanation. Did Melissa say where she was going tonight? I asked. He shook his head. No. I nodded slowly, because suddenly I had a very specific, very ugly thought forming, and I needed to know if it was real. I'm going downstairs, I said. Evan stood up quickly. Mom, what are you going to do? I looked at him, and for the first time since this started, I didn't have a clean answer. I don't know yet, I said honestly, and that was the truth, because whatever came next, it wasn't going to be simple. I walked out of his room, down the hallway, down the stairs. Greg was still on the couch, still asleep, the TV still flickering, exactly where I'd left him. But now, nothing about that looked normal anymore. I stood there for a long moment, just watching him, and all I could think was, how much of this is a lie? Not just tonight, not just Melissa, everything. I stepped closer, my heart pounding again, but for a completely different reason now, because I was about to wake him up.
And once I did, there was no going back. I stood over Greg for a few seconds longer than I should have. Long enough to study him in a way I hadn't in years. His mouth was slightly open, one hand resting on his chest, the remote barely hanging from his fingers. The TV cast this soft blue light across his face, and for a split second, he looked exactly like the man I married. Familiar, safe, predictable. That illusion didn't last. Greg, I said, my voice steady but low. No response. I nudged his shoulder. Greg, wake up. He stirred, blinking slowly, disoriented. What? What time is it? Late, I said. He rubbed his eyes, squinting at me. Everything okay? And that question, so casual, so automatic, lit something sharp in my chest. No, I said. It's not. That will come up faster than anything else could have. He sat up, looking at me more carefully now. What's going on? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I sat down across from him in the armchair, keeping just enough distance so I could see him clearly. I need you to be honest with me, I said. His expression shifted, subtle but noticeable. About what? Melissa. There it was. The flicker. Quick. Almost invisible. But I saw it. And once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. What about her? He asked, too casually. I held his gaze. She was here tonight. That part didn't seem to surprise him. Yeah, I told you she might stop by. No. I cut in. You didn't. He paused, a small crack forming. Maybe I forgot to mention it, he said. Did you forget to mention that she was in our son's bedroom too? That landed. Hard. All the color drained from his face in a way that couldn't be faked. What? He said. And that, right there, was real. Shock. Confusion. Something else too. Fear. I leaned back slightly, watching him unravel in real time. Evan and Melissa, I said slowly. They've been sleeping together. He stared at me, like I just said something in another language. "That's not funny," he said. "I'm not joking." A long silent stretch between us. "No," he said finally, shaking his head. No, that doesn't make any sense. Doesn't it?" "Of course it doesn't," he snapped, standing up now. She's an adult. He's a kid. Why would—" "Because she started it," I said. That stopped him. Completely. He just stood there, processing. She told him things, I continued. About her marriage. About feeling invisible. About needing someone who listens. Each word felt like I was placing something heavy in front of him. Something he couldn't ignore. And then she moved into his room. I said. Into his space. Into his head. Greg ran a hand through his hair. Pacing now. "This is insane," he muttered. She wouldn't do that." "She did," I said. "You saw it?" "Yes." That shut him up, because there was no arguing with that. I watched him closely. Not just what he was saying, but how he was reacting. Because I wasn't just looking for denial. I was looking for guilt. And I hadn't found it yet, which made everything more confusing. "Where is she now?" he asked. "She left." He nodded slowly, still trying to piece it together. "I need to call her," he said. "No." He looked at me. "Why not?" "Because I'm not done talking to you." That landed differently. He sat back down, more cautiously this time. "Okay," he said. "Then talk." I took a breath, because this was the part that mattered. Did anything ever happen between you and her? There it was. The question I'd been circling since the moment I saw her in that room. He didn't answer immediately. And that hesitation, it hit me harder than anything he'd said so far. "Greg." "No," he said quickly. "No, nothing happened." "Nothing?" "No." I held his gaze. "Not even close?" He hesitated again. And this time, it wasn't subtle. It was obvious. "Greg." He exhaled sharply, looking away. "There were moments," he admitted. My stomach dropped. "What kind of moments?" "Just talking," he said. "At work. Late nights. She'd stay after everyone left. We'd have a drink sometimes. I felt my chest tighten. Did you touch her?" "No." "Did you want to?" That question hung there. Heavy. Honest. And he didn't dodge it. "Yeah," he said quietly. That hurt. More than I expected. But I didn't, he added quickly. "I swear to you I didn't." I believed him. And somehow, that didn't make it better. Because now I could see the shape of it. The outline of something that almost happened. Something that didn't need to cross the line to still leave damage. "She knew," I said slowly. "Knew what?" "That you were open to it," I said. "That there was something there." He frowned. "I wasn't—" "You were," I cut in. "Maybe not physically, but emotionally? Yeah, you were." He didn't argue, because he knew I was right. And she took that, I continued, and redirected it somewhere safer, somewhere less complicated. His expression shifted. "You think this is because of me?" "I think you opened the door," I said, "and she walked through it. Just not the way you expected." He shook his head, pacing again. "No, that's not how this works." "Then explain it to me," I said. "Because right now, it looks like a woman you almost had an affair with, ended up sleeping with your son instead." That sentence sat in the room like something toxic. Greg stopped moving. And for the first time since this started, he looked sick. "I didn't know," he said. "I believe that. But I would never." "I know. You wouldn't cross that line." He looked at me confused. "But you got close enough that she thought someone in this house would." That was the truth neither of us wanted to say out loud. And now it was sitting between us. Unavoidable. "What are we going to do?" he asked quietly. That question felt almost ridiculous. Because what do you do with something like this? Your son?
Your husband. A woman who managed to wedge herself right into the center of both. I don't know yet, I said. And again, it was the truth. Because this wasn't just about anger or betrayal. It was about consequences. Real ones. The kind that don't disappear after a fight or a long conversation. Upstairs, I heard a faint creak. Evan, still awake. Still in the middle of this, whether he understood it or not. I'm going to talk to him, Greg said, starting toward the stairs. No. He stopped. Not like this, I said. You're too emotional. You'll say the wrong thing. He's my son, and he's already in deep enough, I said. Don't make it worse. He clenched his jaw, but he stayed put. Good, because the last thing we needed right now was more damage. I want her number. Greg looked at me. Why? Because this isn't over. And I meant that. Not even close. Because whatever Melissa thought she could walk away from tonight, she was wrong. This wasn't just some mistake. This was something that tore through my family. And I wasn't going to let her disappear before I understood exactly why. Greg handed me his phone slowly. I took it, scrolled, found her name. And as I stared at it, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't just about confronting her. It was about deciding how far I was willing to go. Because once I made that call, there was no version of this where things quietly went back to normal. And maybe they weren't supposed to.
I stood there with Greg's phone in my hand, staring at her name like it might rearrange itself into something less real if I waited long enough. Melissa. No last name saved. Just Melissa. Casual. Familiar. Like she belonged in our lives in a way that didn't need explaining. My thumb hovered over the call button. Greg was watching me carefully now, like he wasn't sure what I was about to do, or who I was about to become. You don't have to do this tonight, he said quietly. I didn't look at him. Yes, I do. Because if I didn't, I knew what would happen. I'd lie awake all night replaying it, rewriting it, letting my imagination fill in the blanks in ways that would probably be worse than the truth. And I needed the truth. Not tomorrow, not after I cooled down. Now. I hit call. It rang twice. 3 times. Then she picked up. Hello? Her voice was different, smaller, like she already knew who it was. Don't hang up, I said immediately. A pause. I wasn't going to, she said. I let out a slow breath. Good, because we're not done. Greg shifted behind me, but he stayed silent. I'm so sorry, she started. Stop apologizing, I said. I don't want that. Another pause. Then what do you want? She asked. The question was almost genuine, and that made me hate her a little more. I want you to tell me the truth, I said, all of it. Not the version you gave my son, not the version you tell yourself, the actual truth. She didn't respond right away, and in that silence, I could hear something else on her end. Not background noise. Breathing. Unsteady. I don't even know where to start, she said finally. Start with why, I said. Why him? Her answer came quicker than I expected. Because he listened. I closed my eyes for a second. Of course. That word again, listened. You had other options, I said. Men your age, people at work, my husband. There was a shift in her breathing, subtle, but I caught it. Greg was never an option, she said. That was interesting. Really? I asked. Yes. I turned slightly, glancing at Greg. His face tightened, but he didn't say anything. Because from where I'm standing, I continued, it looked like you were circling him first. I wasn't, she said quickly. I mean, maybe it looked that way, but I wasn't. Then explain it. Another pause. Longer this time. I thought about it, she admitted. Greg flinched. I didn't. I just listened. But I didn't want that, she continued. It would have been messy, obvious, risky. So instead, I said, my voice sharpening, you chose a 17-year-old. It wasn't like that, she said. Then what was it like? Her voice dropped. Safer. That word hit in a way I wasn't expecting. Safer? I repeated. Yes, she said. He didn't come with expectations or history or consequences the way adults do. I almost laughed. Are you serious right now? I know how it sounds, she said quickly, but you asked for the truth. I did, I said, and that's what you're giving me? It's part of it. I started pacing slowly across the living room, my free hand pressing against my forehead. Keep going, I said. She exhaled shakily. I felt invisible in my own life, she said. My husband barely looks at me anymore. Work is just work. And then I'd come over to your house, and everything felt alive. Alive.
That's funny, I said quietly, because from my side, it felt pretty normal. It wasn't normal to me, she said. You and Greg, you had this history, this rhythm. Even when it wasn't perfect, it was real. That stung, because she saw something I hadn't been paying attention to. And Evan? I asked. He was different, she said. He saw me without all of that context. No expectations, no assumptions, just me. I stopped pacing. And that made it okay? No, she said quickly. It didn't make it okay, but it made it easy. Easy. God. Did you love him? I asked. The question came out before I could stop it, and the silence that followed was deafening. I don't know, she said finally. That wasn't good enough. You don't know. I cared about him, she said, more than I should have. That's not what I asked. I know. Then answer it. Another pause. I think. Part of me did, she admitted. I felt something twist inside my chest. Not just anger. Something deeper. Something that made this feel even more tangled. Does he think you love him? I asked. Her voice dropped even lower. Yes. Of course he did. He's 17. He doesn't know how to separate attention from affection, or affection from something deeper. And she knew that. You told him that? I asked. I said things I shouldn't have. She said. That was the understatement of the year. Behind me, I could feel Greg shifting, restless, like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Good. He needed to sit in this. We both did. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice steady again. She didn't interrupt. You're going to tell your husband. A sharp inhale on the other end. You're going to end whatever this is with Evan. Completely. No texts. No calls. No checking in. Nothing. Okay, she said quickly. And you're not coming anywhere near my family again. I understand. I believe that part. Because whatever this was, it wasn't something she could just slide back into. And if I find out you've contacted him again, I added, I will make sure everyone in your life knows exactly what you did. That wasn't a threat I enjoyed making, but it was one I meant. I won't, she said. I promise. Promises. They didn't mean much right now, but it was something. I pulled the phone away slightly, about to hang up. Then I stopped. One more thing, I said. Okay. Why tonight? She hesitated. Then, because he said he wanted more. That made my stomach drop. More. I repeated. Yes. He wanted it to be real, not just secret. I closed my eyes. Of course he did. And you? I asked. I didn't know how to give him that, she said. So you came over anyway. I was going to end it. I let out a slow breath. I don't believe you. I know, she said. And for the first time, she sounded completely honest. I hung up. The room felt different now. Heavier. Quieter. Greg didn't speak right away. Neither did I. We just stood there. Both of us absorbing what we just heard. Upstairs, Evan was still awake. Still waiting. Still in the middle of something he probably didn't fully understand yet. She said she's ending it, Greg said finally. I nodded slowly. Yeah. That's good. Right. I looked at him. And for a moment, I didn't recognize him at all. This isn't something that just ends, I said. He frowned. What do you mean? I exhaled slowly. My chest tight again. I mean he thinks he's in love with her, I said. Greg's expression shifted. And now he understood. This isn't just a mistake. I continued. This is something that's going to sit in his head for a long time. Greg ran a hand over his face. Jesus. Yeah. Silence settled again. Think. Uncomfortable. Real. And then, from upstairs, a door creaked open. Footsteps. Slow. Hesitant. Evan. Coming down. I turned turned toward the stairs. My heart starting to pound again. Because whatever came next, this was the part that would define everything.